Yo, yo, yo.
Hey, welcome back.
We back in this thing.
Hey.
Welcome back, Brown Juice Barbershop. Good to see you, good brother. How you?
I'm good. I wanted to start out by sharing with you. I hit that phase where I got to pull out the Afro rake
Hey now.
because I can't. I no more brushing with the waves. That's done. It's too high. I still do the cap at night, but it's the do rag at night rather. But it's too high. I got to comb.
Listen, I respect it. I appreciate it. And you got the real deal. That's the real McCoy right there.
Come on.
Fine.
Do I ever play?
I hear you. I had to put a little coconut oil on here. It's not quite a pick, but make it work.
I was actually leading a session this week with a group, very serious topic, and I put myself like this. So tell me your thoughts about it. And I was like, oh. It was a moment.
Love it. It's tough, right? When you're at home in your space.
Oh, completely.
You just get so comfortable.
Completely.
Everything's good. Everything's good.
Nobody said anything, so I was like, it's pretty funny.
That is too funny. Well, I see that you got a shirt on. Talk to me about it. Now, I know what it is, but talk to me about it.
This is, everybody must make the pilgrimage to Montgomery, Alabama, to the Equal Justice Initiative space where you can visit the Legacy Museum, which talks about American history from slavery through mass incarceration today, and then the the Memorial for Peace and Social Justice, which has people call it the Lynching Museum, which it is, and it's a really incredible place to walk through. So they have these shirts on sale, which is inspiration for me, but we'll come to that later with some government cheese stuff. But they have these shirts on sale, and they just have various messages. And this one was when the movie was coming out, Just Mercy, and also the book. Excuse me, the book first. The book is phenomenal, by Mr. Brian Stevenson. And then the movie came also, and they made these shirts towards the movie's beginning and opening. So you go, it's really fantastic. It's really about justice when you go down there. You go to these shirts are like $12, and they're good material and they have simple logos. And I like to, I don't know how many I have because I always buy 2 or 3 each time I visit, and I've been there many times. So Just Mercy, the 2 words together just say everything. Mm-hmm. Just Mercy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you sharing that. And I have to admit, still haven't seen the movie. I know.
Well, it's good to talk to you. I thank you for joining me today. I guess we'll get together again later. Come on, man. Why haven't you seen it? Did you read the book?
Yes. Okay. Read the book.
That's okay. That's good.
Read the book. Had a chance to see Dr. Brian Stevenson speak at People of Color Conference. But I have not seen the movie yet. I know. I'll get there.
When you're ready.
I'm gonna get there. So
it's good. It does. It's a great performance, and it does pretty good justice to the book. The book, of course, is much more nuanced. It goes to many more layers, but it's good. I recommend it.
Okay. Well, that's on the list of stuff to do. Well, that kind of fits with what I'm wearing because, again, as I mentioned earlier, my boy Nasheed, Team Savage Apparel. But the session that we shot before, We Are Our Choices. If you go to the YouTube channel and you see the clip, you'll hear some music. That music that's in the back. That's a song that he and I actually did. Called Black Lives Matter. So he's in the one who's on the part, but then when you hear the rapping part, that's me. We cut a song together.
You just put it on. You didn't tell me that. I was like, oh, this sounds real good. I was all like, I don't know who this is. I feel like I should know because it sounded so professional.
Oh, man, yeah.
That's great, man.
Yeah, he's dope. He's a dope musician. It's funny because when we were in high school together, me and him and 2 other folk, 2 of our other homeboys, we were in a group together called DQ. DQ stood for Double Quadratic, and we call it Double Quadratic because it was 4 of us, but we also had our aliases, right? So it's almost like that D12 thing. And we came out with an album called Brothers from Different Mothers, and we just dropped a few tracks. But ever since that, we all had an affinity for music, hip hop, etc. So one time he just had a beat. I was like, "Yo, let's do something together." He gave me this beat. He had a song that he never finished called Black Lives Matter. I hopped on that, and yeah, it's gold.
So you did that recently?
So this was this was probably it's 2020 now. It's probably either 2018, I think. I think 2018 we did.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So what's your alias?
So when I was younger, my rap name was Young Mix, right? Then in college, which I still use now, and I have like a picture of it in my office at work, Kasi. Kasi being Kosie, which stands for knowledge of self is essential.
Nice.
So that's pretty much my rap name.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So
That's great.
representing
That's
that,
great,
representing
Let's see. Work it out, Team Savage. I see.
Yes, sir. All right. All right. So how about we get into a little bit of that Brizan?
Yes.
What you got today, brother?
So in honor of like all my traveling that I do, I brought my little like Woodford Reserve bottle. You know, when you get on the plane and get up front, you ask for the brown, they give you this. So
Yes.
in celebration of like traveling, that since I miss it, I put lotion on my hands beforehand. Mistake, rookie mistake. There we go. That's a sound on the plane. You hear that
sound? You know it's about to be a good flight. Once you hear that, you good.
What you drinking? What you got?
I got a little bit. You had the Bullet Bourbon earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going with one of my go-to ryes.
Okay, rye. Work it out.
Going with a little bit of rye.
Woo.
Alrighty. Sounds good. Good to the last drop. There you go. Listen. Don't waste it.
Woodford Reserve is actually good.
No.
It's good.
Really good.
I'm not mad. When they get little bottles,
listen.
I'll be like, can I have 2 more? Just wrong. Like I just want to be able to front of the plane, know how, look at you acting like.
Yeah, talk about it. Well, I guess we could do a simple toast, which is not too simple, but just to you, to life. You know, just great to be in conversation again, man. Good to see you.
You, man. To you also.
All right.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Oh goodness. That'll work. That'll do it.
Oh, that's good.
That will do it. So, I got some questions for you, brother.
Please.
All right. So, you know, we're both educators. And you have had an advantage of traveling, particularly as a filmmaker, to share the films that you've done, also to give keynotes, lectures, etc. In this moment in time, our students are at home, right? In this moment of time, school is looking different. In this moment in time, what we knew as going back and forth into these buildings to sit in the classroom, to learn, is completely different. We know there's been online learning before. We've seen a number of different programs. We know about homeschooling. We know about all these things. But generally, I always say this, and you know, you can attest to this, but usually if someone is in conversation with me for a long enough time, I'll bring up the whole notion of how much I hate school. I bring it up all the time. I say I love education, but I hate school. Making a difference between schooling that, you know, the policing of your body, telling you where you need to go, how you need to be, you know, raise your hand when you want to speak to me, raise your hand and go to the bathroom, wear this, wear that, those type of things. But the education, like truly the art of learning. I'm asking you all this because as we sit in these spaces now during this time, COVID-19 era, right, where people are trying to think about things differently, think about school differently. I would love to know from you, what has this moment taught you about the U.S. education system specifically, and educational and like education in general? So when you think about the reflections, you probably had these thoughts before, but just looking at how things are now, what has this moment taught you about U.S. education, the system, or just education in general?
Yeah. Take a little drink.
May the force be with you.
I've been thinking about that a lot. And witnessing the world start to believe the inequities that are out there. You know, I have a master's in education. I don't think you know. I don't know if you know that, but I went to grad school for education, did my practicum up in Boston, did the whole thing. That's how I got to SPES and all that stuff.
Okay.
And so my thesis for my degree was a look at how America basically, to an extent, invented public education,
Mm.
sort of post or during the Industrial Revolution rather, how folks were moving in the house and schooling was different. It became a whole new, the day was different, and we needed schools, and schools were formalized. So we basically invented here in America the system of public education. Many parts of Asia, Germany, all kinds of countries took the model and streamlined it and made it work
Mhm.
in much better ways. Um, because of our history with racism, inequity, um, misuse of capitalism, I'll put it that way, we see some folks getting better educations than others. The fact that some institutions, some areas, the fact that districts are defined, like the public schooling is defined by the amount of income and tax applied to certain where people live. That's not a step towards equity education at all whatsoever. So this moment of watching stuff online and watching people struggle and seeing some teachers just be like, forget it, throw their hands up, and seeing some students struggle with the experience is really complicated. I really do believe in this notion that we are not homeschooling. We were at home during a crisis trying to go to school. So this isn't like we're just homeschooling everybody. That's too simplified of a notion in terms of what's happening. We're in a crisis in the world, and we're trying to figure out what it means to educate. So what I've seen, and for me, I wondered about the levels, how this could have been a level playing field moment to an extent, where everybody has the same. It's up to you and what you got in the space of figuring out. But I go to my Sula girls one more time, and I look at the internet connections they had and what they were able to do, and comparing them with the kids in our private school who had everything right away. Philadelphia public school system said no teaching anything new because they're concerned about inequities. And think about all the kids who are in apartments in New York City alone. Where are you going to go to have a quiet space to work and do your whole day of school? Like, it doesn't work. So for me, it is hard because I've been able to. My classes have been great. My kids have been thriving, present. They get there early. Like, I have to go turn the Zoom on, and I'm like, oh, they're waiting at the gate. I'm like, I ain't gonna open. I'm not gonna open up my window yet. Let me get my 1 minute. But they're there and they're present because they want it. And my class is at 2:30 on Friday.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. So they've been doing this all week, and they show up like this. Doing all the work, creating, doing stuff, very present. I think that I want to say that I have a luxury of education when it comes to the private school that I'm in, with the way these children were trained to be critical thinkers and be present. They're struggling with the whole notion of like, I'm online doing this. I'm not talking to anybody except my family and some siblings. And what does this mean? You can see it in their faces. I feel like half my kids, half the time in their class, they're just happy to be there and present. And I let myself be dorky. I've been doing things. I start classes with Aretha Franklin's Who's Zooming Who. I have a blast when they come and they're just like, oh God, André, here you go again. And really keep it open for conversation and share with them and grow and develop and have conversation, challenge them, give them assignments, and they're showing up. So I have many thoughts about it because I think it's about the actual educator. I think it's about what the actual student has and is able to show up with in terms of levels of preparedness, levels of support outside of the space you emphasize being in this little classroom, this little digital box that we're in on your screen. The actual screen, the machine that kids have. One class I've been like guest checking in. There's a kid who just doesn't, you can see he doesn't have proper sound system. So he has his computer on and he's talking through his phone. I'm just like, yo, that's a lot to go back and forth with, when you're also like taking a class and getting knowledge and prepare. So it's I believe it could work because I've seen it work with my children, but they have 5 legs up relative to most kids in the country. And I wonder what it's like for folks out there who don't have all the benefits and the privileges that the students I work with in this private school have. So I do believe a dedicated, committed teacher can make it happen and work. I don't know if you saw that clip of the young woman who went to her kid's house because the kid won an award.
Mm.
And she was outside banging the pan, yelling. They was like, "Little John won the award. He got the best of it." And I was like, "That's what it takes." But she probably has 25 other kids to go teach. Can she do that for every single child? Like, how does that work? So, and then also we have this moment in space. I've been talking to friends who have young kids who are like showing a kid's schedule. And these kids, they're little kids. They can't go and they probably can better than you and I in some cases, but for the most part, it's like, okay, now it's been an hour, time for you to do this. Like the adult needs to manage them. And that adult also is working, or working at home during a crisis. So it's complicated. I think we are at a moment of discovery every day. I once again will advocate and talk about my institution. We're lucky to have somebody who's head of school who's a biologist. And we were like 7 weeks out saying, let's prepare for what will happen if we need to cut school, we need to leave the building tomorrow. Like she was on that weeks out. And also going back and saying, the whole community was like, what did we do during the Spanish flu? Because we were open in 1918, 1919. What did we do? We made it through that. We can make it through this. Polio was another issue, and that affected kids. These older schools have made it through. So that's a very long answer for saying it's a complicated answer. It's a complicated situation. And I believe that with the right teacher, hey, look, take a minute, watch this. I'm doing an old school Quaker name. Teacher André. I believe that it's possible, but it's hard. It's really hard. It's a really hard and terrible moment right now. Did I answer? Because I feel like I just went on for a while.
No, I think you hit a number of different pockets though, because it's not that straightforward of an answer. If you want to have a cynical, jaded perspective, then it's probably a little bit more of a straightforward answer. But if you really want to look at the totality of the situation and really think about where you can find nuance, where you can find space for innovation, it becomes a very complex question that spans a number of different communities, a number of different institutions, a number of different learning styles, etc. But the things that I think that you really hit the nail on the head, it is a crisis. So it's not homeschooling. So it should not be seen as such, because there are some successful homeschool programs that look nothing like what we're doing right now as institutions. I think you put it beautifully when you said it's almost like we're trying to do school at home. And that is a totally different perspective. As I shared with folks in my institution, I said, you know what? We were forced in some spaces to be reactive to the situation because of how things were handled at the national level, etc. However, moving forward, I think this is a great opportunity for us to be reflective and proactive about what this can be, particularly because guess what? Chances are we're going to need to continue to do this for some time in one way, shape, or form, or we can think about how we can use this to add to our institutions, to add to education. Whether it's schools who are looking for other revenue streams, whether it's schools who are looking to be a little bit more accessible to a larger group of people, whether it's thinking about continuing adult education, whatever the case may be, whether it's thinking about diversity training, whether it's thinking about hiring conferences. There's so many ways that we can actually use what we're learning about right now or going through right now to strengthen our communities, to strengthen our institutions, to actually get past that schooling piece and get to the education piece. So we are at a crossroads in a lot of places. I would say the questions that we need to ask is, what is necessary for a good education? Realizing that everyone doesn't come to the same space about what education should be, and realizing that we're all going to have the same tools and resources to utilize those things that are supposed to be giving us that strong or that good education. To relate it back to what I said earlier, when you asked me what was my alias, knowledge of self is essential. I think it's important right now for us to think about being student-centered. And I always talk about being student-centered, and shout out to Dr. Chris Emden, who talks about reality pedagogy, and one of the things he always talks about is being student-centered, decentering that authority figure who says, I am the teacher, right? And I'm going to give you the knowledge, just like Paulo Freire is the whole banking concept, right? I'm going to give you the knowledge. I own the knowledge. But separating that, saying, you know what? We're co-learning together. We're going to be co-teachers and co-learners. So guess what? I'm in your home literally because we're Zooming now. So what does it mean for me to think about my curriculum as it pertains to you, your life, and your resources at home? What does it mean for me to step back as a teacher and allow you to teach us? Because we all have something to share, in addition to all have something to learn. So I think this is an opportunity that, again, if we use it, we can be reflective, we can move forward, we can think about what it means to be innovative in these educational spaces. We can start to embrace technology, or at least the positive things that technology provides for us. And honestly, to be truthful, it has shown that some folks need to step it up in some ways, because you have some phenomenal educators who will jump through hoops to get it done. But then you also have some folks who are just like, listen, this is my job. I show up, lather, rinse, repeat, and that's what it is. So when you take them out of that comfort zone, there's no innovation, there's no creativity, there's no spontaneity, there's no improvisation. So are you really teaching, or are you just holding court, waxing poetic, and not really engaging with students the way you need to engage with them for them to really have education taking place? There might be some folks who are getting that, but the vast majority of different learners from different perspectives, are you really capturing them and making that important connection? So, I mean, there's so many layers there that I want us to explore as a nation. Even the model of just thinking about, how long it takes to get to college. In my ideal world, I mean, I think we've seen from this moment that students who are a young age are capable of great things.
Mm-hmm.
But we can think about that, the traditional model of, you go through it, then it's 12th grade, then you go to college, and we can revisit that and think about what that might look like. We can think about degrees and what those things mean. There's so many things that are on the table. But again, some folks are afraid of change. But again, and it reminded me of a quote, and I wanted to write some quotes down so I didn't forget, because I always look for wisdom from the ancestors. So talking about some quotes that I just want to share, W.E.B. Du Bois, right, said, a system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect. Thinking about that in that space, right, as it pertains to education and American education. Think about Dr. Amos Wilson, one of the best, most, I guess, renowned Black psychologists. If you want to understand any problem in America, you need to focus on who profits from that problem, not who suffers from that problem, right? And then talk about it. And then if we really drill down even further, we could talk about Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro. If you teach a man to think a certain way, right? There might not be a back door. He will demand that back door. If not, he'll build it himself, right? So there's just so many pieces that I always wrestle with when I'm thinking about being in these spaces, and what some students are subjected to. And I'll put it to you this way. One of the person who I made an introduction to, who's my colleague, he said, you know what? One of the good things about this is that in some instances, just by not being at school, microaggressions might drop 40% inside the classroom. So, but that's real. And that's things that we need to wrestle with and talk.
Let's go to that point. I'm running with that. My mind is running with that.
Okay.
Are you in agreement with that, or is that true? Or
so here's the thing. I am in agreement with that, because I think that sometimes it's just like in a relationship, proximity, right? So it's almost like when they say, when they talk, let's just talk about, for example, like black on black crime, for example. Mm-hmm. And people say, oh, look at all this stuff. Well, it's really about proximity, because who do you live with, right? Mm-hmm. Who you live next to. So when you think about certain things, it's like you're subject to certain spaces where things can happen. And sometimes because you're not wrestling with the things that really are at the heart of the matter, that often might be overlooked or not addressed, then, just being removed from certain spaces, those interactions might not take place. Now, the flip side of that is they're not being worked out either. Mm-hmm. That's the flip side. Mm-hmm. Because when you have true diversity, it's going to become challenging.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever been in a conversation with one person who doesn't agree with you, that's a difficult conversation to have sometimes.
Yes,
But if
Lord.
you throw so many more people into that pot, it's
Mhm.
difficult. So I think it's a proximity thing, but it's also like removing that power dynamic as well,
Mm.
or welcoming someone else welcoming their full selves into the conversation. Because
Mhm.
whereas some people might not care about other people's home life, or they don't have to see it, it's now making its way into it. So you have to see these things, understand it, hold it core and center. Because before, a lot of people, I know me, I went to a predominantly white institution because I wanted to get away from my environment to go to that place so I can have more access and more access to resources, more access to opportunities. And we could talk about why that's problematic to begin with. But to get into those spaces, in order for me to have those opportunities, I'm now nowhere near. So I removed myself from some things that I might have been victim to. However, I'm now in a space where I can be victim to other things as well.
You got me thinking now. Gotta think about this. Gotta go through the thinking process. Wow. Yeah, that's funny because I first heard that I was like, nah. And then as you talk about it and go a little deeper, I can comprehend the thinking. I understand the proximity situation. I guess my worry was any excuse to say this isn't here anymore. But I
Mm-hmm.
jumped on, which
Mm.
is my way of understanding and coming to the conversation. So I hear that. I'll think about that. I wonder if the microaggressions will go down because of that. It's interesting because I've been doing lots of consulting and managing and facilitating with groups that are adults around these issues and topics with communities who are used to doing this stuff digitally because these people are remote workers for the most part, and that's a very interesting concept. But I hear that. I hear that. I hear that. And the quotations you mentioned remind me also of an address I gave. I gave this address at a gathering for Quakers in the arts,
Mm.
Quakers who teach art programs. And one of the texts I took, and I wish I had those quotations you mentioned because they touch into it. But there's a guy Palmer who wrote "Meeting for Learning," and the whole idea is taking the concept of meeting for worship and applying it to a classroom. With a meeting for worship with the Quakers, the idea is like the group comes together and the group makes it happen. There's not someone in charge, not someone may clerk it, but there's not someone we rely on to be the leader. And what does it mean as a teacher to go into that space and you figure out the lesson and the ideas together?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really great combination. And I wish I had those quotations. Well, next time I give that talk, I'll bring those in because those speak right to that notion and idea of how to decentralizing, decolonizing the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
How do you move away from an authority figure being the sole voice to letting the students and the whole room come there? And I think it's scary. It's a little scary to do that, but when it works, it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic, and I really feel like I've been able to achieve that. Much better a couple of years into teaching than I was at the beginning. I also have notions of when I think about this discussion of education and teachers. Um, I'm a little cautious in terms of some of my critiques because I'm only teaching one class a week, besides my Sula girls and some other stuff. But I only have one class, and some people who have multiple classes and multiple disciplines, I find myself stepping back and saying, you know what, let me respect
Mm-hmm.
because it's a lot to take on to be in it all. I'm doing other stuff all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not like sitting around watching TV. I wish I was, but that's not what's happening, you
Sure.
know. But I like to listen to what teachers have to say first before I make my assessment. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, I think what I hope, if nothing else, is that again, I believe true growth comes from being vulnerable, not knowing something, and having to endeavor to find out or figure it out. And some people haven't been put in those spaces
Yeah.
where they've had to actually face a challenge head on and navigate through it. I'm not talking about students right now. I'm talking about adults. And sometimes I might come across as that dude who's just like, your expectations are too high or whatever the case may be. But I'm like, no, we have expectations for our students that are lofty, that are also attainable, particularly if we provide certain support. What I'm saying is, as adults, we also have to think about those things.
Yeah.
And maybe this situation is now putting people who often weren't in those situations to think about what it means not to have access to something, to think
Yeah.
about what it means to be difficult or to show up late because your technology wasn't working or because you had things happening behind you. You have a screaming kid or whatever the case may be that you're a little bit distracted and like unfocused. Let's think about that. So at the end of the day, it's really about educational empathy and it's really about equity. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what this moment means for that, because if we go back to school and nothing changes, I'm gonna have a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everything has changed. Everything under the sun has changed. And it's, it's what adds complication to that is a lot of the people that we're asked to do this work for the education, for the leadership, they're struggling also because they are in this crisis too, and they're being affected, whether it be from deaths or the isolation or, everything that comes along with this situation, the scariness of this, because it's arguable that your main job is staying alive.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where we are right now. Your main job is staying alive. And watching what's happening on the country, it's like not everybody's on that same task, have not lined up to stay committed to that same concept and idea, which is scary as hell,
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because to be real, prior to this situation, that was a lot of folks' job, staying alive.
Exactly.
And I want people to hold on to that. Yes, I want people to hold on to that. That's all. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is a real. It's it for me. I always get so bothered when people are surprised by the results of inequity. When people are surprised by the results of racism. When people are surprised by the manifestation of the problems rooted to the foundation of this country. And I sit there and I wait. I'm like, yeah, okay, I hear you. Wow, you're surprised. I heard a fact today on NPR, and I was going off my little bike ride, that with this epidemic, one in America, one in every three COVID death problem situation was with a Black person. One out of every three diagnoses was that of a Black person. You hear that? I mean, I remember being in high school. We used to joke. I had three Black friends, the three of us, three Black guys in my high school, in a class of that was majority white. And we used to joke about, oh, if one in three Black men dies and one in two Black men is in jail, it's going to be one of us. That was like our joke. That's a painful joke for 10th graders to have. Yep. We kind of like, ha, ha, And so, and once again, it's like, I'm back at it. Here's that stat again. And back when I was a kid, I was like, why? I don't understand this. Why is that a truth? Are we bad? Why do we die? That's where I was. As an adult, since I've studied and read and explored history and understand who we are, and when I say we, I mean America, I'm like, oh, this is why this factor is in place. People don't have access to healthcare. People don't have money. People live in poverty. Poverty leads to problems and injustice and diagnosis. It's just clear. It's just clear. And people who are working at, some of the essential work beyond the hospital doctors and the like, people who have to go work at restaurants, do the work that's been delegated to lower income people, they are in those spaces that are allowing for them to be vulnerable. Folks who are riding, like, it's great. New York has a great program where the city bikes are available for healthcare professionals. That's awesome. Jose up in the Bronx, used to get downtown, ain't gonna come on a city bike. Erica out in Flatbush is coming to Manhattan to work. She is not going to ride a city bike across the bridge. That's nice of y'all. She's on the subway.
Talk about it.
That metal conducts and holds the virus.
Talk about it.
Like, let's just lay it on the table. Like, there it is. Why isn't Erica and Jose Juan living in Manhattan? Because it's so expensive. The stuff I had to go through coming to this building I live in right now, and I was moving in with friends.
Mm.
The landlord was like, oh, I'm not sure about that guy. I don't know about him. And I was like, wow, like here we go. Here we are. And I think right now, right now it's going back to that. I'm the only person of color in my entire building in Manhattan in 2020 in the East Coast. Only person of color in the entire building. Like, come on. Like that's not by mistake or by chance. That's by design.
Talk about it.
It's by design. So yeah. Some of my thoughts. A little comb out.
Listen, man.
Knowledge, man. It's a knowledge moment. Knowledge.
Woo. And so back in the day, you know, I used to always talk to people about diversity when I was giving speeches for, you know, the college I work with, when we were talking about like information sessions and like, you know, what diversity is. Because a lot of people, I gave an example about New York City. I was like, I'm from New York City. People always talk about New York City being a melting pot. No, not at all. Because again, whether it's redlining or whether it's self-separation and segregation because you're trying to be with your familiar and you're trying to be with folks who are going to look out for you and appreciate your aesthetic, etc., cook the food you like to eat, etc., folks are just in different spaces. So there's no melting pot there. However, a place that's so diverse, ethnically, religiously, etc., like New York City, that's just the mark of all these institutional inequities from top to bottom that, again, hope people are starting to pay more attention to now. But again, it's a hope.
I don't know, man. There were photos yesterday in a neighborhood that used to be like the West Village, Christopher Street Pier was like the spot for like the gay, Black, Latino, lower income communities. Kids were kicked out of the house trying to find a space. Paris is Burning was filmed there. Now that neighborhood's been gentrified. The houses are multi-million-dollar houses, high rises, $1 million apartments. And there was a photo from this weekend. Yeah, because yesterday was beautiful in Philadelphia. Beautiful. People, how to say it, cheek to jowl, just like all up on each other. And somebody sent me a picture. My friend Latricia. She's out in Bentonville, Arkansas. That's my girl, Latricia. She's amazing. She sent a picture. Said, "Boy, you better not be out there." I said, Latrice, look at that picture. Do you see any Black people in that picture? I ain't going out there. You know, I'm not out there. I'm not out there. And I get it. It's beautiful outside. You want to go outside. You want to be around people. But we got to be smarter about this. But the point I'm really making is the transition of that space. That space was claimed and gentrified to the highest extent. There's like a little shop on there that sells like popsicles for like $9, you know, and it's just amazing to think about what that was and what it is now. And then it's the people out there hanging out, and I'm like, I want you to hang out, but now is not the time. Now is not the time, and that potential, just the danger of it all is just upsetting. No. And I find myself, I was talking to a friend yesterday. A friend asked me. This is my friend, he's a doctor. And he said, you know, he could understand why people were supporting the current president and will get behind him. And I said, well, you know, these moments in America right now make you understand slavery. As a student of history, I spent many times thinking like, how can people improve this and let this continue? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. How can people look at people and say, you have the right to own people and just not do anything about it? You know, and I said, you know, and he was like, oh, I think it's a little different. I said, no, really think about it. Like, this is a reflection of how we function and do. The people in the North, while they didn't have slavery at the same number as people in the South, they still were chilling in their cotton, living off tobacco, consuming sugar. 3 items that we didn't really need. They weren't vital. They're great and they're wonderful. I got my great multi-material poly blend cotton poly shirt that fits good and stretch. I love it. But you know, and that's reflection of the moment right there. These people are living and thriving off of the economy created by the oppression of others, and we do that. And so when it's convenient for us, you stay in that space and say, you know what, this is good for me. I'm cool with it. I'm a nice person. I don't take part in that, so I'm just gonna chill over here. Until you go over and say, wait a minute, what you're doing is unfair, unjust, and not okay, not how we should live as a world, you will assist the perpetuation of that problem in those moments that exist. And so I'm no longer surprised by the people who support and get behind Trump, despite the things that he says, or Trunk, this one woman who says, I actually puts it out there. She gets behind what Trunk is saying. It's like, yeah, people do that because it's benefiting them, it's not hurting them directly, and they want to continue with what they have. You know, I tell people all the time, when I talk about equity and justice, it does not mean me coming to your house and cutting it in half. It means that's somebody else. It means, how can I make sure that everybody has a chance to achieve at the level you were able to achieve at? We have rules, practices, and policies in place, and laws that keep us from participating at the same level.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a good thing this is brown juice, man, because I need it.
Talk about it. Make you hot.
I don't need it. I really appreciate that I have it at this moment to get me through these moments. But I do feel like I need it, but I don't need it.
For sure. Absolutely. I get you, brother.
Yeah.
I get you. Yeah. So, well, that was my question.
Well, do we have time for another one? Because I have one that's on those lines.
Listen, brother, we got time. We'll splice this thing up if we need to, release it into, we good, brother. Beautiful.
Because I wanted to ask you, do you think, and on this note of education, do you think that we are asking too much? Are we asking teachers, I'll rephrase it. Do you think that we are requiring teachers to be like Harlem? As in doing too much? As remote teachers? Are we asking teachers to do too much with remote learning and education?
I think we are not asking teachers to do the right thing. Shout out to Spike Lee. Now, my thing is this, though. I've been pushing because, again, I'm a student of going to find out facts, figures, research, etc. Like, get information for you to make an informed decision. I also don't like schooling per se because of how prescriptive it can be, as opposed to organic. So are we asking teachers to do too much? I think we're asking them to do the wrong thing. It's not the right thing. Now, realizing that there are some pieces of this remote learning that should be used, there's so many models that we could take a look at. Think about higher education. My master's degree, I did completely online. Through Drexel, completely online. Beautiful experience. As an introvert, as a person who says they hate school, but wants the education, I don't need to be in a space where I'm commuting back and forth to be in a space. And we can collaborate virtually. We can present together. We can sit down in space. We don't have to fake the funk to be classmates. It's like, let's exchange knowledge. And if we have a relationship that develops from that, great. I love that. But like I said before, when I was in college, I felt like I had to be a politician as opposed to a student. So what I'm saying is, we need to think about ways that we can, it's almost like having an independent educational program, IEP, right? In this situation, you have folks who might need something, and you have others who might need something else. Does that mean that we should continue school as we know it, but just at home? Like you said, we're trying to do home, not homeschool, but school at home, right? So I would say that in terms of asking them to do too much, I think we're asking them to do too much in the sense of they're doing the wrong things. And I think that we should think about what this looks like. So maybe instead of meeting so many times throughout the week, you meet a few times. Maybe instead of inundating people with so much information, you curate some information, you put it in a certain space, and you tell people where they can find these tools. Or my personal favorite, which I was pretty much lobbying for in a lot of different spaces, is, all right, school's over the way we know it. We have opportunities where we can take advantage of something that can, one, help people, whether it's faculty, staff, students and their families, and also help us think about what we can do moving forward as an institution. So if we took a month, similar to how some schools have, we took a month to explore topics that teachers were passionate about, and just abandon the syllabus, but stuff that teachers are passionate about, that students can sign up for. So it's like choose your own adventure, but we have opportunities and we're utilizing all the adults. So it's not just the people who are just the teachers. We have other folks who have knowledge, who have advanced degrees, etc. Whatever you're looking for your criteria, you can pull from them their source of knowledge and wisdom. We can set those things up. The issue is, because of the system that we have currently, in the sense of you need these grades in order for you to put in this transcript so you can present it to this college, etc. My thing when I was in college counseling was saying, listen, we as high schools should be dictating what colleges should be looking for, as opposed to colleges dictating what we should be doing. That was my whole push. So I think what we're seeing is we're really, and this just gets back to the school piece, and I'll get off my soapbox in a second. It gets back to the school piece. Because we're focused so much on schooling and how things have been done, as opposed to education, we're like really tied that we can't do certain things that would free us up from this whole mold of trying to do school at home. Because if you look at homeschool kids, their curriculum's different. There are some ways that they might actually take some of the curriculum, whether it's, APs, but the curriculum's different. Like we can teach different ways. We can teach the same knowledge, the same type of math, but in different ways. That's going to be culturally responsive. That's going to be something that really keeps the student at the center, that says that they don't need every single textbook that you gave them. So I think we're asking them to do something that does not feel right. We're asking them to do something which is impossible, reproduce school at home for these children. So we're not asking them to do the right thing. And that's what I think. So great question. I think we're not asking them to do the right thing. We're just like, let's go through the motions. We have a product that we have to deliver. We're worried about all stakeholders, but at the end of the day, schools are businesses. There's bottom lines that need to be met. There's so many things there. And again, I'm not envious of people who have to make these decisions.
Right.
I just know that if I was in those spaces, I would probably think about things differently. And I try to give information where I can, but we need leaders in this moment to say, you know what? If there was ever a time to do something different, it's right now in this crisis. And people say, never let a good crisis go to waste. All right, whatever. In this moment in time, think about what we can be doing differently that's going to serve our populace in the best way we can.
Who's saying never let a crisis go to waste?
Listen.
Yes.
People who haven't been a part of crises, they've been the ones who have been the privileged in the crisis.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really those are really good notions and ideas that I think I can vibe with in a big way, because it is important to focus on the education and not the schooling. Those are two very different things. And when you really can get a person engaged in wanting to learn and being excited about being there, it's not about following steps in a process. It's about communicating and learning together. And when you can achieve that, it's a beautiful space. But some folks just aren't confident about that and get fearful. So I hear that. I agree. I think you're right that we're asking them to do the wrong things. Really asking them to do the wrong things, and you have to think about that, because we have a world to rebuild. The world is on its head and upside down, and it's interesting to watch because nature is like, you can see the earth. It's just like, whew, thank you. I needed this break. I was
heard so many birds chirping.
Exactly. I'm here in the East Village in Manhattan. You usually hear cars going by, people making noise, gates going up and down. This morning, I was like, have these birds always been out here and been this loud? Or is this a new thing? And it was just squashed by all the other noise.
Mm-hmm.
There are no cars. There are very not no cars. There are very few cars going by, and also very few planes. You know, where I live, you would hear a plane, at least a few planes, a couple of hours. You know, and they're not flying directly over. Well, they're flying over, but yesterday I was on a roof, and I was up there for 2 hours just hanging out, and saw 3 planes. And one was like a little small plane that went by a few times, and I was like, that's not what it's usually like up here. You know, they're usually like, well, I wonder where that's going. Ooh, I wonder where that's going. So many planes, and so I'm saying all that to say that when we come back, what is this when we come back? We haven't left. We're right here. That's it. I just caught myself. When we come back from all of this, we're right here. And we need to figure this out right now. The comeback is the physical space of being in a closer proximity to people and et cetera. But I have to think about that. I've been saying when we come back, and we haven't left. We're just in a different space. And we have to figure out how to restructure all of this, because what we have ain't working. In many different ways. Ain't working at all.
You are absolutely right. And the thing that I've been asking, and maybe in many ways troubling, and I never want to project my own feelings or other people, but I get a sense from the people that I talk to that no matter where you are right now, and no matter where you're going back to physically, there's going to be a need for reentry, a period of reentry and readjustment, recalibration, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm chilling at home.
I know. I was thinking about that.
Conversations.
You're such an introvert. This is like heaven for you.
And it's like, then I gotta go back, and you mean to tell me I gotta talk to people again? Like, I mean, I don't know if there's an amount of money that could be put in front of me. It's like, you gotta talk to all these people again. Like, there's certain things, just like, I can't even imagine how many epiphanies, because I know it's been happening for me. I can't imagine how much clarity and epiphanies and like ways of seeing the world differently are happening right now.
Clarity is amazing.
That means. Yeah, clarity is amazing. So I just wonder about that.
It's almost a little scary, some of the clarity, some of the things that we're figuring out and realizing that are necessary to explore and think about. I really have been focused on how I show up. Really focused on thinking about how I show up, and what does that mean in this world, and what are the choices I made in terms of my life. It's like the world or God was like, okay, all y'all go be introspective for a few months. I want all y'all to go to your room. Somebody said this. It's like Mother Nature said to us, like, you've been terrible. Go to your room and you can't come out. No. And it is the introspective moment of the century. You know, which is only 20 years old so far, but you know what I mean.
For real.
Yeah, this is fantastic, man. These conversations.
This was good.
We just need mercy, baby. We just need mercy.
Yeah, I love that you said that. We definitely do. We definitely do. So yeah, man. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
You know, always great, this conversation. Even when we talk about heavy stuff, it's always fulfilling. It's always rejuvenating. So I appreciate that.
It's the best. This is fantastic. Thank you. It's so valuable. I look forward to this all week. I know I say it again and again because it's the truth.
Likewise.
The truth.
Well, you know what rhymes with truth?
What's that?
Brown juice.
Hey!
So how about we do a final toast, my brother? Final toast.
I want to toast to your brilliance, because you bring so much to the table that I appreciate and learn from each time. So
listen,
your brilliance, man.
Thank you. And I just want to say before you take a sip, I thrive off you, brother. I do. I really do, because again, iron sharpens iron, and you know, let's say, you never bring like a knife to a gunfight. I need to bring my wits. I need to bring my knowledge. I need to do my research, because I'm coming to intellectual conversation, and we gotta get after it.
You show up ready. I love it. All right.
All right. Well, till next time, we'll holla. Brown Juice Barbershop. Stay black.